So there's been a lot happening in the studio space lately, and if you've been following the whole Warner situation, you already know Netflix walked away from that acquisition, and now all the buzz is pointing toward a Paramount Skydance deal being the more likely play for Warner's going forward. Meanwhile, Paramount's own representatives came out and made a pretty bold statement. They're committing to theatrical releases in a big way, talking about putting out 30 full wide-release films per year. Do the math on that, and you're looking at basically 2 or 3 Paramount films hitting theaters every single month. For people who genuinely love going to the movies, that's actually exciting to hear, especially coming off a stretch where streaming felt like it was swallowing everything whole. Netflix hasn't made any comparable promise, so take that for what it's worth. But even outside the acquisition drama, Paramount's new stakeholders and leadership have started talking openly about what they're calling a new phase for the studio. And this new phase isn't about reinventing the wheel, it's about leaning hard into the IP they already have. The Sonic trilogy is their proof of concept. Those 3 films collectively made a ton of money, they held up at the box office, and maybe more importantly, audiences actually liked them. That's a rare trifecta in modern Hollywood, and Paramount noticed. So now they want to apply that same formula, family-friendly, approachable, fun, to their other franchises. On that list, you've got the Ninja Turtles reboot slated for around 2028, which they're positioning as a completely fresh start with new filmmakers and new writers. You've got Transformers, where rumors are flying that Michael Bay might actually come back, though everything points toward that being more of a soft reboot or a reimagining rather than a direct continuation of his original saga. And then you've got G.I. Joe, which is arguably the most complicated situation of all of them. Here's the thing about G.I. Joe that doesn't get talked about enough. The license expires in 2028. If Paramount doesn't put something out before then, whether that's a film, a show, or even an animated project, the rights could revert fully to Hasbro. And once Hasbro has complete control, they can do whatever they want with it. They could sit on it, they could sell it to another studio, they could shop it around to a streamer. So there's a real urgency here that's driving this whole thing, not just creative ambition. It's a licensing deadline masquerading as a development slate. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Paramount has already moved fast on this. They've got 2 separate writers working on 2 completely different scripts simultaneously. Max Landis, the writer behind Chronicle, and Danny McBride. The studio is apparently hoping to eventually merge both scripts into one film, though at least one insider framed them as independent projects. Look, developing multiple scripts at once isn't unheard of. Paramount did it with Transformers, they did it with Star Trek during that franchise's peak years in the 2000s. But it does signal a certain anxiety, like they want to get something right badly enough that they're doubling the resources up front rather than committing to a single vision. Whether that produces something coherent or something messy by committee is genuinely the question. And nobody even knows yet if this will be a full reboot or some kind of continuation, because technically they already rebooted the franchise pretty recently with Snake Eyes, the 2021 solo film starring Henry Golding as the iconic Silent Commando. That film flopped at the box office, no question about it, but it actually found an audience on streaming afterward, and honestly, it's not a bad film. It's got problems, but it's watchable, it's got style, and Golding was a solid choice for the role, so it's a little awkward now. Do you pretend that movie didn't happen? Do you soft reboot around it? Do you ignore everything and start completely from scratch? Here's where I'll throw out my own take, because I think the creative direction matters enormously for whether this franchise has any future at all. The original G.I. Joe films, the Stephen Sommers one from 2009 and Retaliation in 2013, had a fundamental identity problem. The characters were genuinely cool on paper. Duke, Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander, Destro, these are iconic designs with decades of mythology behind them, but the films tried to play all of it totally straight. Dead serious military thriller tone, guys calling each other by their code names without a hint of irony, over-the-top action sequences presented with zero self-awareness, and it created this strange tonal whiplash where nothing landed the way it should. You can't have a guy in a chrome face mask being a major villain and treat the whole thing like Zero Dark 30, it doesn't work. What G.I. Joe actually needs is a film that understands where it came from. The 1987 animated movie, G.I. Joe the Movie, is the blueprint that nobody in Hollywood seems to want to acknowledge. That film went full throttle into its own mythology. Cobra Law, Serpentor, the transformation of Duke, the origin of Cobra Commander. It was operatic and weird and completely committed to its own internal logic. It wasn't trying to be a real military film. It was a sci-fi action-adventure set in a world where secret paramilitary organizations fight each other with laser rifles and battle suits and talking snakes. That's the energy. That's what fans respond to when they talk about loving Joe. It's the Saturday morning cartoon world taken seriously on its own terms, not filtered through a lens of real-world military realism that strips out everything that made it interesting in the first place. The fan base for Joe loves it for very specific reasons. The massive roster of characters, each with a distinct look and specialty. The mythology around Cobra as this sprawling, almost cartoonishly evil organization with internal politics and weird science. The Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow rivalry, which is genuinely one of the better rivalries in all of action entertainment if you trace it back through the comics. Larry Hammer's original Marvel Comics run is still considered a masterclass in ensemble action storytelling. The Real American Hero animated series ran for years and built a generation of fans who remember it as genuinely formative pop culture. These people aren't asking for Christopher Nolan's G.I. Joe. They want something that captures the feeling of being a kid watching those characters and thinking this world is limitless. My honest pitch for what this new film should be is something that takes its cue from what James Gunn did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Gunn took a team that even hardcore Marvel readers mostly shrugged at, rebuilt them with heart and humor, gave them a specific aesthetic identity rooted in retro touchstones, and made something that felt unlike anything else in the genre. For G.I. Joe, that means leaning into retrofuturism. Build the world like it exists in an alternate timeline where the 80s never ended, where the tech is simultaneously advanced and analog, where Cobra is genuinely theatrical and imposing rather than just a military villain of the week. Think something in the visual and tonal register of Peacemaker or the Suicide Squad, where you can have absurd, colorful characters doing insane things while still making you care about them emotionally. The key is committing to the bit. Cobra Commander in a hood, Destro with the chrome head, the Baroness in tactical leather. Don't sand those edges down to make it more palatable for a general audience that wasn't going to show up anyway. The audience that shows up for Joe already knows what they want, and what they want is exactly that. Give Snake Eyes a story that actually honors the comics. The Silent Warrior angle, the dual backstory with Storm Shadow, the Arashikage Ninja Clan. That material is genuinely compelling if you treat it right, and surround all of it with the kind of ensemble chemistry that makes people want a sequel before the credits roll. The 2028 deadline is actually an opportunity in disguise if they think about it the right way. They don't have time to overthink this into development hell. Pick a strong creative voice, trust them with the material, and make something that doesn't try to be every other franchise simultaneously. G.I. Joe was never generic. The films made it generic. That's the problem to solve.